Visiting Ireland? These are 13 tips to get the most out of your stay. Yep, we drive on the left, we overtake on the right, we pay in euros in the Republic and British pound sterling up in Northern Ireland. We've got a Type G power output or power plug. Those are the kind of tips that you can find in other videos, but in this video I want to go over 13 real tips that will help you get the most out of your trip to Ireland. Stuff that I wish that I had known before my very first visit. We're doing that while we're visiting a 8th century pillar stone in southwest Ireland, and we're starting right now. Tip number one is don't try to do everything in one trip. Ireland has 150,000 archaeological sites, 30,000 castles and castle ruins, more than 340 stone circles, 32 counties, and more coastline than official numbers can keep track of. The point is, you can't see it all in one trip, so don't try to. My tip here would be to do maybe 2 or 3 things max per day, that you can really take those things in and that it doesn't become too much, that you don't overwhelm yourself. Tip number 2, many heritage sites that are managed by the Office of Public Works are actually free to visit on the first Wednesday of every month. Now, it's not all of them. I'll drop a link down below to a document that tells you all the details. There's a good little extra tip there. Ireland's winter days are very short. That is tip number 3. If you are in the heart of winter, a typical day will last anywhere between 7.5 to 8 hours worth of daylight. That means it can get dark just shortly after 4 if you're in the heart of winter. So keep that in mind when you're scheduling your trips in winter time. Approach ancient monuments like they were supposed to. So if you're visiting a holy site and are looking for a very special experience, don't just drive up to them and expect something to happen. We've got this idea in our heads that, oh, if I only was able to visit a stone circle or a standing stone or a holy well, then I'll have a transcendental experience. If you park your car right next to a stone circle, you walk 2 minutes, you sit down, and you're expecting something to happen right there and then, you're most probably going to be disappointed. Instead, approach these monuments like they were intended to. They were built thousands upon thousands of years ago without any cars around. That means that getting to them was a pilgrimage in and of itself. You spend at least a part of your day, if not more, walking to the site. The very physical act of walking was part of the ritual. It already started to put you in a state of mind, so to speak. So if you want to up your chances of having a real magical experience, consider going to these sites that aren't easily accessible. For example, Scotia's Grave south of Tralee takes about 30 minutes of a hike to get to. At the Den of Scribes on the BEARA Peninsula, 3 hours at least worth of a hiking to get to. The point is, consider how you are approaching these monuments. If you're coming from far away, places like India or Canada, make coming to Ireland in the first place just a part of that experience of your pilgrimage. Use those monuments the way that they were intended to. And are you going hiking? Which shoes will you wear? If you're going into bogland or agricultural land, wear wellies. If you're going into the mountains, wear something with plenty of grip. If you're going anywhere remotely off the beaten path, your shoes are going to get wrecked. So know where you are going and have the right shoes along for that journey. So for today we are going straight through a cow field. That means wellies and wellies all the way. And stick around to the end of the video, because then we'll be going into something that might cost you a lot of money. But that's for later. For now, if this is the first time that we're meeting, my name is Niels. On this channel we go into the history, the mystery and the beauty of Ireland for those people that would love to visit this gorgeous country. If you get some value out of this video, consider giving it a like. One extra piece of housekeeping: if you see any B-roll in any of our videos that you like, want to know exactly where it is, just drop me a comment with the timestamp. I'll try to give you the exact coordinates so that you can visit that place for yourself. Tip number 6, the public transport. Know exactly when the buses are going and have a backup plan in case you miss the bus. Now, Ireland's public transport system it's not the worst, but it's also not the best. So let's say that you're going to be in a small town like Kenmare, that is a tourist hotspot in the summer, but you find yourself there in the middle of winter and you're expecting a bus to leave every hour of the day. Like maybe, for example, that's happening in your home country. You're going to be in for a rude awakening in Ireland. It's just not how it works here. Also, once you are in a small town, buses don't go to the holy sites that you want to visit. So you might have to hire a taxi, a bike or a tour bus for that last stretch from the small town to the site that you want to visit. So the point is, check beforehand and have backups in case that the bus doesn't go or you miss it. There might only be one connection for the whole day. Tip number 7 would be to get off the beaten path and take the road that is less traveled. If you're going to go to Newgrange, consider going to Douth or Noath as well. Drumback Stone Circle? Instead, visit a local stone circle where there are far less tourists. You can have the place for yourself. At the Ring of Kerry, think about doing the Ring of BEARA. Blarney Castle? Also visit the Three Castle Head on Mizzen. So go off the beaten path, but when you do, know exactly where you're going, because there's a lot of double names here. You might think that you'll be going to a place where there's a specific site, but instead you end up in the middle of nowhere that has the same name, but no site. Ask me how I know. Tip number 8, don't mention the war. Or at least be more diplomatic than Basil was in Fawlty Towers. And yes, that was my best German accent. I'm not talking about the Second World War here either. Instead, I'm talking about the centuries-long tussle between Ireland and England. It's still a bit of a sensitive subject here. Doesn't mean that you can't talk about it, just understand that it is still somewhat of a sensitive subject. The Republic of Ireland only got its independence from the United Kingdom 100 years or so ago, during the famous Rising. It's a very young country and it's still coming to terms with a lot of its own history. Things like the relationship between the Catholics and the Protestants, for example, or Ireland and England. These issues, they run long, they run deep, and Ireland is still coming to grips with it. In 2011, Queen Elizabeth laid a wreath at the Garden of Remembrance in Dublin, and a day later she made a speech at a formal banquet, and in that speech she acknowledged the deep, complex and often troubled history between England and Ireland. So I'm mentioning it here to you as something to be aware of. This is not ancient history to the Irish. Local men once told me that to really understand modern Ireland, you need to understand both the famine and the Rising. Now, there's far more to Ireland's history and identity than that, but this is all to say that this can be a touchy subject. Just be aware of it. And number 9, all of these abandoned houses. What is that all about? So you're going to see a lot of abandoned houses during your trip, from castle ruins to small villages, manor houses, and even modern houses, all abandoned, and they all have different reasons. For example, the castle ruins were mostly destroyed during the Cromwellian campaigns in the early modern period. Whole small villages that have been abandoned. This happened during the Great Famine, where everybody either died or moved away to America, or as they say on the Misenhead Peninsula, the next parish over. The 17th and 18th century manor houses that you see that are abandoned, these often were from Protestant landowners, mostly English landlords, and they got rent from their Irish tenant farmers, the Catholics. And the Anglo-Irish landlords, they had about 5,000 of these manor houses, about 90% of all of the manor houses in Ireland. When the famine hit, it hit hard, and the tenants they couldn't pay their rent anymore. So the Protestants often moved back to England, and the manor houses became unattended to. And then later on, during the Irish struggle of independence, these manor houses became targets for bombings and arsons. Then you've got the modern houses. During the Celtic Tiger in 1995 to about 2008, there was just the most enormous amount of economic flourishing in Ireland due to foreign investment. And that's wealth that went into building new houses. And then the bubble burst. And a lot of those houses were never finished, and you can still see them everywhere. So just something to be aware of. You're going to see a lot of abandoned houses. Tip number 10. land ownership. Now, as you can tell from all of the above, land ownership is a big deal for the Irish. But there's also 150,000 archaeological sites in the country, so a lot of them are going to be on private property. If you're visiting a site that is out of the way, off the beaten track, ask the landowner for permission to enter his land. Now, usually they are really all too happy to help out. It's one of the best things to have the local landowner tell you all about what he knows about the sites on his land. But if there is a sign not to enter, and don't worry, that won't be happening often, but if there's a sign to not enter, please respect that and don't go onto the land. Tip 11. Different parts of the country look radically different from one another, and not every part looks like an idyllic travel postcard. For example, in Kerry, people sometimes joke that County Wicklow, just to the south of Dublin, with its mountains and its forests, that is the most beautiful place in Ireland, for those who've never visited Kerry. Now, I'm not hating on County Wicklow here, because it is gorgeous there, but this is to say that even though this is a small island, it has a lot of different faces. So travel and be prepared that it's always going to be distinctly Irish, but not every town, not every area is as beautiful as the postcards. So travel. Ooh, tip number 12. This is going to save you some frustration. Make sure that things are open beforehand, so visit the website. For example, Skellig Michael, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's closed half of the year, simply because the seas are so violent that you can't make a landing on the islands. The cable car to Jersey Island is expected to close somewhere in 2022 for maintenance. So just check beforehand to see if something is open or not. Check the website. So this is all that is left of an early medieval ecclesiastical site. This is the remains of a high cross. What makes this one so interesting is that there are carvings on the stone itself. I'm not quite sure if the camera is picking that up, but you don't have many of these intricately carved, very early Christian stones left in Ireland. And the last tip, tip number 13, the one that's going to cost you money, is the Ireland bug, meaning being bitten by the Ireland bug, wanting to come back again and again and again. It's a high probability that that is going to happen. There's always something new to see. Ireland is so unique in its history, in its landscape, its people. Just the feel of the place is so unique. There's a high chance that you want to come back. Just be prepared for that. Okay? Hope you enjoyed this, that you got some value out of it. We'll see you in the next one.